working papers open up, why don't you go ahead and spin around and look this way. I'm going to do a little bit of review before we actually go on the computer to complete our first application. So yesterday I went through and did the presentation for section 1-2, and 1-2 deals with our accounting equation. The accounting equation is very similar to what we did with our personal net worth statement. We had assets and we had liabilities. Definition of an asset. Something you own. Definition of a liability. Something you owe. Those are two things you have to know. Like, we're going to hit that hard because we use that all year long. It's important that you understand the definition of an asset and a definition of a liability. Now, to calculate our personal net worth statement, we took our assets minus our liabilities, gave our personal net worth statement. When we do our accounting equation, and we do that following certain rules called GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, and those terms are up there, again, on our wall that we wrote. That is following the rules that have to be in place in order for all business to know whether or not they're making money or losing money. You can't have one business doing it one way and another business doing it a different way, so we'll go through and get all of that set up. Our accounting equation, which I still have on the wall over here, is assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. We just talked about assets. We just talked about liabilities. The new term that we have there is actually called owner's equity. Owner's equity is the value of the business, what is left over after you pay off everything you owe. Who gets the value of the business? It's a very basic statement. Who gets it? The owner, yes. Now, these three words, assets, liabilities, and owner's equity, are called an account classification. So we define assets of things we own. An actual asset account, remember we listed them in orders of liquidity. What is an example of an asset account? First thing we put on that personal net worth statement? Cash. Now yesterday we learned about a couple more. I spent a little bit of time talking about it, and you used it in relationship to vehicles. What was that type of asset? Insurance. Now, we didn't call it insurance. We called it something else. Leon, do you remember what we called it? Instead of insurance, there was another word in front of it that starts with a P. Nope. Prepaid insurance. Prepaid insurance means I pay today for the next couple months. I'm not paying for the last month. I'm paying for what's coming up. That's what makes your insurance policy an asset. You own it. It has value. If I decide today I don't want my insurance, I call and I cancel it. They'll give me some money back. So prepaid insurance is an account title that we keep track of what the business has spent on insurance. Okay. Another one that we have is these dry erase boards that I showed you yesterday. Do you remember what these were? What I called these for the business? Started with an S. Supplies. Supplies are things businesses have to have in order to be in operation, and they got to keep working. They buy them. If I don't want these dry erase boards, I can sell them, and they are worth a lot of money, right? Maybe not. So supplies are an asset. We talked about how sometimes in a business we go through and buy things but we don't pay today. I'm going to pay later. So the Thunder Zone does it all the time. I am hoping and praying tomorrow we are going to get cookies delivered finally so we can start baking and selling cookies during ELT. When they come and they drop off the cookies, they're going to give me several cases of cookies. Do I pay them the minute they drop off the cookies? No, they give me a bill and I pay it later. So that is a liability to the Thunder Zone. So I'm going to have accounts payable Reinhardt Foods. That's who we get our food from. So I'm going to be buying things on an account. So on account means we buy now and we pay later. FBLA does it when we buy treats for our meetings. We go down to Don's, we charge it, we walk away with the candy/supplies, and then we pay that bill later, buying on an account. Businesses have to do that because it's hard to do some type of interactions. Now, some businesses, if they are behind in bills, meaning they are not paying on time, some businesses will not drop off goods unless they physically have a check there. But most businesses will trust that you're going to pay, and then it only gets into where you have to pay right away if there's something going on financially. Now, what we do with our accounting equation is we need to remember assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity, but no matter what, that equation needs to stay in balance. So if I have cash going up and I have owner's equity being affected, is owner's equity going to go up or down? Two sides of that, right? Cash is an asset we've discussed. If cash is going up and I'm affecting owner's equity, what has to happen to owner's equity? It has to go up. If the left side of my equation goes up and I'm affecting the right side has to go up. We always need to make sure that it is in balance. And that's what our Work Together 1-2 is going to take a look at. On the very top up here, we have something called our question assets. And I want you to notice this image and this shape, because if you were using it on another device, you could actually go through and resize this so it's not so wide. You can pin it so that way it's always there, and then if you had to do a lot of scrolling, you wouldn't have to keep going up or down. So I just wanted to show you that. So depending on your screen size, please make sure you adjust the way you need to. You can also make it shrink up if you wanted to work down below. So again, just a little bit of working with Applia. So here's the transactions, and the transactions are going to be events that occur that affect our accounting equation. We are going to be doing transactions all the time in accounting, but again, that's a new term in 1-2. Our directions read here: for each transaction, enter a plus in the appropriate column if the account classification, assets, liabilities, owner's equity is increased. Enter a minus in the appropriate column if the account classification is decreased. Both a plus and a minus sign can be entered if necessary. So notice when we look at these transactions here, does it really give us the amount? No, that's not important. Right now, I just want you to grasp the concept of anytime something happens for a transaction in our business, we always affect two accounts, and we always need to make sure that our accounting equation stays in balance. So my first transaction is bought supplies on an account. So the first thing that you have to realize when you bought supplies on an account is we have to have two accounts. Justin, can you give me one account when you bought supplies on an account? So if we read this transaction, there is an account title in that sentence that we used yesterday. That would be an account. Isaiah, can you help him out? Sure. Well, for number one, do we have insurance? What do we have instead of insurance, Isaiah? Oh, I'm not quite tall enough. Hang on, let me get my pointer stick. It's just like this far out of my reach. So I'm looking at just this one right here. So, bought supplies on an account. So investment is a good option, but what about for number one? Yeah, that was my, do you like my brain? I couldn't point any closer. So supplies, agreed? Now, supplies, is it asset, liability, owner's equity? Do we owe supplies? Does that make sense? Now, owner's equity only deals with the name of the owner. So is supplies the name of the owner? So what are we left with? Asset. Do we have more supplies or less supplies? More. So I have to, sorry, now it's right here, under assets, put a plus. Work together. Working papers 1-2. Now, that is one account. Is my equation in balance? No, the left side went up. Now, what's the rest of this transaction? We just dealt with bought supplies, right? I broke down that sentence, bought supplies, supplies going up. Now I'm left with on an account. On account. What does that mean to a business? I got crickets this morning. What do you got, Justin? What does that mean? Yes. So do we owe somebody more money? And if we owe somebody, the hint in owe is it's a liability. So what has to happen to my liabilities now? It also needs to go up. So I'm going to click in liabilities right here, and I'm going to use the plus sign. And I will tell you, when I put in the plus sign, I find it much easier on my keyboard to use the plus sign on the 10 keypad on the far right-hand side. Otherwise, you got to do the shift of the equals. So as long as you have your numlocks on, so I'm looking at this keyboard. I know the keys are off. But I'm really talking about using this plus is a lot easier than doing the shift of the equals on here. Does that make sense, this one? But in order to make that work, you got to have numlocks on. How do you know if numlocks are on? Quick visual. How do you know? There's a light right above it. There'll be a light that'll show you numlocks is on. If you have caps lock on, that's the second light over. So just to give you a heads up, I like to use the numlocks when I'm doing accounting work because, well, it's a lot easier than doing the numbers up top. So we just did transaction number 1. Now transaction number 2, receive cash from owner as an investment. Tanner, what's one account that you recognize in there? So, Tanner, who invests in a business? Yes. Specifically when it's first starting out and we're doing a proprietorship, who's going to invest in it? Starts with an O. Owner. And the reason I want you to think of the O word as the owner, because that's going to help us on our accounting equation. So Tanner, if the owner invests money, that is going to be owner's equity, right? Because it's coming from the owner. Is the value of owner's equity, Tanner, going up or down? Yes. So we have more owner's equity. So I'm going to click right there. I'm going to put in the plus sign. Lillian. Now we're going to deal with, he dealt with the last half, owner as an investment. So let's take a look at the first half, receive cash. What account do you think would be affected with receive cash? There you go, okay. I'm really making sure it's really that simple, like receive cash. Now, Lillian, cash is what type of an account? Asset, liability, or owner's equity? Do we own it? Do we owe it, or is it the name of the owner? Yes. So we own cash. So cash is going to be what then, Lillian? Own, owe, owner's equity. It'll be an asset, okay? So we know it's an asset. Do we have more cash or less cash? More. So we're going to go ahead and do our asset here as a plus. Transaction number 3, paid cash for insurance. Morgan. Cash. That was a good one to pick. What kind of account is cash, Morgan? Asset. Do we have more cash or less cash? Less. So cash is going to need to go down. So I'm going to put in a minus there. The other half of that transaction, Devin. So she dealt with paid cash. What are you dealing with? Yes. What is insurance? Asset, liability, owner's equity? There you go. Teacher facial expressions help you out on that one. And here's the thing. Remember, we talked about when we pay insurance, I own the insurance policy for the next 3 months, 6 months, year. So the policy is in my name. You know, when you get your car insurance, you get that little certificate that says that's your policy. You own it. If you don't want it, can you sell it? Yes. So that is what is going to make insurance an asset, not a liability. You pay the bill for it, but you still own it for a while, so you got to make sure that you know from there. So do we have more insurance or less insurance, Devin? Yes. So I have to, right here under my asset, put a plus as well. One is going down, one is going up. So then my equation is still in balance. So number 4, paid cash on an account. Caitlin, what one do you want to take on that one? Cash. Cash is what type of an account? Asset, liability, owner's equity. Do we have more cash or less cash? So what are we going to do there? Yes. Jacob, what's the other half of this one? On an account. Woofta. What does that mean? That's a good answer. It's okay to say I don't know, because that's my job to go through if you don't know it, to help you understand. So on an account means I have somebody that I bought something from, and now I'm paying them. Okay, if I am paying them, it's because I owe them, right? So if I owe them, what is your classification? It is going to be a liability. So if I pay on account to Don's for the candy, do I owe Don's more money or less money? I owe them more. So I bought candy. I paid them $100. So how much I owe them now is more than $100? Less. Okay? And I understand why you think more, and that's why I always ask the question, do I owe Don's more money or less money because of this transaction? And when I give them money, I owe them less. So the amount that I owe them is going down. So I'm going to go ahead and go to liabilities, and I'm going to go to minus. Now, what is really important? I know I am going slow. Some of you may get this. The questions and how I ask them are important. The very first thing that I do when I read this transaction is I ask you to identify an account. Okay? His was, for example, Don's. Cash is the easiest one because it usually says paid cash or received cash, and you're like, all right, cash. And eventually you know cash is an asset, you own it, and it has value. The second thing that I ask, after you know what account is being affected, is what is its classification? Is it an asset, liability, owner's equity? Once you know that, then I ask you, is the amount of that account going up or down? You ask yourself that question all the time when you're looking at transactions. So I say that every time to get you to train your brain to this is what we need to do. Go ahead and do save and continue, and then go ahead and try that on your own, which will be on your own because I'm not going to do it with you. Okay, spin around and look up here. Your application problem I have turned on, and it is due to me when? Tomorrow at what time? 7:55 a.m., so before class starts. It is not a long assignment. You should be able to finish it in class today without any problem, okay? But if something happens, I want you to know that you do have it. Now, when I look at this assignment, first thing I want you to realize is on the very top, there's a big blue button and says what? I am done, grade it now, right? Now, the other thing I want you to realize is the actual name of this assignment. It says application problem 1-2.1, and what does this say? Randomized. What does that mean? The numbers you have is different than the numbers your neighbor has. So you can't say what's your number and then match up because it's not going to work. Got that? Okay. So when we look here, how many attempts do you have? 3. So you get 3 attempts to go through. So if you try it the first time and you don't like your score, can you try it again? Should you do that? Yes. This is going in as an assignment, so I wanted you to see that. So the other thing I want to point out to you is I'm going to go ahead and open this one up. This looks different than what we just did together. So basically what it says, for each row, fill in the missing amount to complete the accounting equation. So when I look at this right here, we know the accounting equation is assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. So here I have my assets number. Here I have my liabilities. What do I have to do to get my owner's equity? Subtract these two to get that number. Got it? So you're going to do that all the way down. Do you have to type in the comma? No, the comma will automatically go in for you, so don't worry about entering that in. Now, the easiest way for you to have a calculator is if you click on Start in the lower left-hand corner and then click and type in CALC. That is the abbreviation to go ahead and get your calculator from the computer up. So again, Start in the lower left-hand corner. Then the other thing you can do is when you open up your calculator, I like to talk about this because otherwise you're going to end up typing back and forth. If I put the calculator right here and I type in a number, oops, and then I do, and I actually use my numeric keypad instead of clicking. You know why? It's faster. It's faster for you to type on your keyboard than it is to move your mouse. And now I have this number, and if that number goes here, this is not the right number. What happened to my calculator? It disappeared. Why? It went behind it. So what I will do is I will actually go through and shrink this a little bit so that my calculator stays open here. Not that way. So I have my calculator up in this area, and I can go back and forth without it always disappearing. That will save you valuable time. Now, if you do this on a Chromebook, what can you do? Because you can't type in start and go to calc. What's another way you can do something like that? So you can actually just open up a new tab. And if you're not aware, let me show you. In a tab, you can actually just do math. You don't have to go anywhere. My computer is being silly. So up here, right where I type in the URL, I can do 112 plus 32, and it just gives me the answer. It's a little bit small here. So you don't have to go and open up a calculator app. You really just do it up here on the top, and it will calculate it for you. On a Chromebook. Here, in the Windows, your best option is going to have this up and running because it takes up much less space. Sound good? I will also turn on the reading for 1-3 that I would like you to read tomorrow. The other features that I have turned on is I want you to realize that I have a terms review. Is the terms review graded? How can you tell? It says practice. The graded ones have this giant orange red thing to be like, look at me, do me. If you don't do me, you get a 0, okay? So terms review is there for you to practice your vocabulary. And we see Delgado Business Services, that was a reading. This is a reading. Audit your understanding. Some of you went through and did the audit your understanding 1-1. And I tried to give you feedback. I'm working through this feature as well, but this allows you to go back and answer some questions to see if you know what you learned in 1-2 yet. So that's a good practice. The other thing I will do is I will turn on the reading assignments so that way you can see that as well for 1-3. So the absolute assignments that you have to have done is application 1-2 before class tomorrow. And I want you to read 1-3, and I would like you to practice the terms review and the audit your understanding. Good? Go. Go forth, practice set accounting.